The recording was already playing when they called my name. I want that understood first, because everything that follows depends on it. I did not bring the black box into that chamber. I did not choose what it would say. I was the only human seated below the tribune dais, and I had been there 11 minutes before anyone asked me a single question. The compact had the platform on the floor in pieces. What was left of it? A scorched chassis, one tread, the recorder casing pried open and rehoused in their own analysis cradle so the room could watch the waveform climb and fall on the display behind the tribune's heads. 5 species sat that bench. I knew 3 of them by sight and none of them by friendship. Tribune Kalsuraven was on her feet when the doors sealed. Tall, grey-skinned, the kind of stillness her people wear like rank. She had already told the chamber what the recording would prove before it had finished playing a third of itself. A machine, she said, that would not stop killing when its operators were dead. Built that way. Authorized that way. This is what the human delegation calls restraint. Nobody asked me to respond to that. I didn't offer to. I had spent 4 years attached to the Joint Treaty Commission specifically so that I would never be the one giving speeches in this room. My job was confirmation, not argument. Yes, that is the unit designation. Yes, that is a genuine recovery. Yes, the timestamp format is ours. I gave Ven exactly that, in the fewest words the record would accept, and then I sat back down and let the recording keep running, because the recording was not finished, and she had stopped it early. That was the first thing nobody in that chamber seemed to have noticed. She had stopped it early. The clerk beside me, a narrow, patient Itheran with too many fingers for the stylus he was using, looked at me once, sideways, the way you look at a man who has just declined to defend himself. I didn't explain. Explaining was the one thing I had promised myself I would not do in this building. So I asked, instead, that the recording be allowed to finish. Ven allowed it. The way a tribune allows something she's already decided doesn't matter. The waveform climbed again. The machine's last active minutes filled the chamber. Engine load, target acquisition, the flat administrative voice of a combat platform doing exactly what combat platforms do. No fear in it, no malice in it. Nothing for her case to feed on except the bare fact that it had kept firing for 6 minutes after its crew compartment went silent. 6 minutes that, on their own, looked exactly like what she'd called it. Then the platform's own log read out the order it was executing. Not a general directive. A specific clause, time-stamped, cited by number, in the exact phrasing of a surrender terms protocol. The protocol the compact itself had tabled 8 months earlier, in this same chamber, as the acceptable terms for disengagement if a crew was incapacitated mid-conflict. Continue defensive fire until relief arrival or formal stand-down signal, whichever first. Human delegations hadn't written that clause. The compact had. I remembered the session. I had been sitting in this same seat when it passed. The room didn't react all at once. That's not how rooms like that work. It happens in patches. One tribune's head tilting half a degree, a translator pausing mid-phrase, a junior aide 3 rows back going very quiet in a way that travels. Ven's face didn't move. That told me more than if it had. I said one sentence. Just the one. That clause is yours. Check the minutes. I didn't raise my voice to say it. I didn't need to. The chamber was already quiet enough that a flat sentence landed like a verdict. A clerk pulled the original session record, not the summary, the full transcript, the kind nobody reads twice. It took 4 minutes to surface, for minutes in which nobody on that bench looked at each other, and when it came up on the secondary display the clause was there in the draft language and absent from the ratified text. Struck. Not amended. Struck, between the floor vote and the final filing, with no recorded objection and no name attached to the edit. I hadn't known that part. I want to be honest about that, in case anyone reading the official account decides I orchestrated the gap. I hadn't known the clause had been quietly removed from their own ratified minutes. I had only known it had been said, in this room, on the record I'd sat through. The platform's recorder didn't know it had been struck either. It was still executing a clause that, as far as its programming was concerned, was law. The compact's own law. Issued, then erased, then forgotten by everyone except a machine that couldn't forget anything. Tribune Ven was the one who had moved the strike. I learned that an hour later, from the clerk, in the corridor, in the tone of a man telling you something he wished he hadn't been the one to find. She didn't shout when the gap surfaced. She didn't explain it either. She sat very straight, the way her people do when the floor is no longer theirs, and she said nothing at all, which, I noted, was the same thing I had done 40 minutes earlier, except I had chosen it and she had run out of better options. The second tribune, the Dorith elder with the slow blinking eyes, asked for a recess before any vote could be called. Not a denial. Not a defense. A recess, the chamber's word for we need this to stop happening in public. I was not asked anything else that day. I gave my confirmations, I let the recording finish, I pointed at the one fact that mattered and stepped back from it immediately. There is a temptation, in a room like that, to press an advantage once you feel it turn. I did not feel the temptation, not really. Pressing it would have made the moment about me, and the moment had never been about me. It belonged to a machine that had simply done what it was told, by an authority that had told it one thing in public and erased the telling the moment it became inconvenient to remember. The vote on sanctions never happened. The session adjourned instead, formally, on a motion nobody opposed, and the compact's internal review of its own ratification process opened 9 days later under a different tribune entirely. Ven kept her seat. They didn't remove her. They just stopped letting her speak first. I've been asked since, by people who weren't in that chamber, who only have the transcript, why I didn't say more. Why I didn't argue the point, lay out the timeline, make them feel the weight of what they'd tried to do to a platform, and by extension to us, on the strength of a record they'd already quietly falsified. I didn't need to make them feel it. The recording made them feel it. All I did was ask them to keep listening, and tell them where to look once they had. That machine fought for 6 minutes after its crew died because somewhere, once, a roomful of 5 species had told it that was the lawful thing to do, and meant it long enough to write it down. They forgot it. It didn't. In the end, that was the entire difference between the side that built the weapon and the side that judged it. I still have the timestamp written down, in my own hand, in case anyone ever erases it twice.